So recently, Congress passed the huge omnibus bill that allowed us to basically avoid a partial government shutdown. Now, there are a lot of things in the omnibus bill that obviously were not great, including more spending on military, defense contractors, and things like that. But there was actually some good things that were included as well. And also stuff that obviously didn't go far enough. For example, they had the legislation that would try to fix the country's national instant criminal background check system for gun purchases. That's actually not comprehensive gun reform. That actually isn't universal background checks. But it's something that Republicans can say, oh, look at that, I did something. And look, Democrats can also say, hey, look, I did something. All right. Anyway. There's more. There's actually something good. Election security, for example. The measure includes $380 million for election security grants. Now, some of that would include going back to hand-counted paper ballots, which I think is a great way to actually protect our vote. So, and of course, some of that came after the Senate Intelligence Committee put out some recommendations to some of the states to shore up our election system. The omnibus also would increase funding for the opioid epidemic by about $4 billion. The omnibus also included a proposal that would not allow restaurant owners to pool tips. That's something that the Labor Department wanted to do that I was against. It also includes child care and development block grants, an increase in federal jury duty pay, an expansion of the low-income housing credit, the National Park Service, money for that, more money for veterans hospitals and homes, pay raise for the troops, money for school safety, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of good stuff in the omnibus, as well as stuff that I didn't like in the omnibus. Now, there was one thing that didn't get reported very much as well, and that is actually increased money for disability claims. Now, this is very important. Now, according to, I believe it's The Hill, tucked inside the sweeping $1.3 trillion spending bill passed late last week by Congress was an item that has not been in the budget for nearly a decade, a funding increase for the Social Security Administration. Now, the Social Security Administration, of course, has a lack of funding. So they don't have a lot of funding, and so they're unable to get to a gigantic backlog of disability claims. Apparently, there's over 1 million disability claims in the backlog. Holy crap. Now, the Omnibus Appropriations Bill also increased funding to the federal agency by about $480 million, bringing its overall administrative budget to more than $12 billion. $100 million of that will target the disability hearing backlog, in which claimants on average wait around 600 days for a judge to decide whether they will receive benefits, including health insurance and a monthly Social Security payment. Now, who was the person that led this? Well, you're not going to be surprised to find out that it was Senator Bernie Sanders. Sanders, the ranking non-Republican in the Senate Budget Committee and the leading proponent of the funding increase, said he became committed to securing additional money for the agency after reading an article last year in the Washington Post, which examined the personal cost of waiting for a disability decision and reported that 10,000 people had died waiting during fiscal year 2017. He said, quote, "I could not believe that 10,000 people died. It was beyond belief and unacceptable." Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that it's so underfunded. Apparently, the funding has remained stagnant since 2010, even though more people have, of course, tried to claim disability benefits. You've got a lot of baby boomers, for example, that are either retiring or living to the age of where they become disabled and actually have to get on Social Security for that. So in roughly the same period, they report, as judges worked with the shrinking support staff and scrutiny over the growing disability roles heightened, of course, Republicans are like, God damn, people going on disability. No, you should work until you're dead. That's literally the Republican retirement plan. If you ain't rich by the time you're 65, you should just work until they throw you in the ground. If you think that's an exaggeration, you haven't exactly been paying attention to the Republicans. Anyway, now the average judge went from deciding 12 cases weekly to deciding fewer than 10, which contributed to the significant backlog. Now, that's $100 million went to going to that backlog. Now, of course, there was a lot more money that went to this, $480 million. So where did the rest go? About $280 million went to the funding of the funding increase will be directed towards updating the agency's information system, which might help judges work through their caseloads faster. And the $100 million specifically addressing the backlog will go toward hiring more judges and expanding support staff. Now, Senator Sanders also had this to say. I'm sorry, that's not Senator Sanders. This is Nancy Altman, president of the advocacy organization Social Security Works. She said, quote, "It's very, very important. We've got 10,000 people who are turning 65 every day. This money doesn't get the backlog to where we should be, but it does get us back down on those wait times." Now, Bernie Sanders had said, quote, "What Americans want when they get on the phone or walk into an SSA office is that they get treated in a kindly and appropriate manner, and that is increasingly not the case. We want to make sure Social Security functions, and that's what this is all about." So, that's actually good news of some of the stuff. One of the things that was in the Omnibus bill, we do need to do something about Social Security. We need to make sure that it is there for people who need it. That's why he voted to expand or wants to expand Social Security. Actually make the payments bigger, but also to get through this disastrous backlog. Now, of course, Republicans are going to use the argument, well, look at the backlog. Obviously, Social Security doesn't work, and that's why we should privatize it. Don't fall for it. Again, it being underfunded is a manufactured crisis. This is a manufactured crisis, just like the crisis at the VA. These things need to be properly funded so that they actually work. But if Republicans do that, of course, then that's going to go against their main argument for privatizing these programs. It's the same thing they're doing with the VA. There is a huge, huge push to privatize the VA. And so we cannot let them do that. These programs work. These programs are effective, but only if they're funded properly. So we need to make sure that they continue to be. And that means pressing our politicians on doing so. And thank goodness Bernie Sanders is there trying to do the work as well. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.